Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to crack open Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho.
Oh, yeah.
This one is especially interesting
Interesting.
because it came directly from you.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for sending it in. Clearly, this book left an impression.
Definitely.
And I'm curious
Yeah.
to see what we can unearth together.
Sure.
Is it the infamous violence that drew you in?
Uh-huh.
Or the razor-sharp satire? Or maybe
Okay.
just the sheer audacity of it all?
Whatever the reason is, I think
Yeah.
it's clear that American Psycho still hits a nerve even decades
For sure.
after its controversial debut.
Absolutely.
It's a book that forces us to confront
Yeah.
some uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Yeah.
About the society we live in.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Published in 1991,
1991.
it caused quite a stir, even getting banned in some places.
Oh, wow.
It's this dark and satirical look at 1980s yuppie culture, but it's also a psychological thriller that really gets under your skin.
Yeah.
And of course, at the center of it all
Yeah.
is Patrick Bateman, our, protagonist.
Right.
Feels like a stretch.
Bateman, he's become this cultural icon.
Oh, yeah.
Almost a shorthand for that materialistic, status-obsessed Wall Street type.
Yeah.
But beneath that perfectly tailored surface,
Right.
there's something truly sinister lurking.
You're telling me the book is filled
I know.
with these meticulous descriptions of Bateman's designer clothes,
Yes.
his grooming routine, his obsession with
Yeah.
getting a reservation at Dorsia.
Uh-huh.
Remember that scene where he breaks down his entire skincare regimen,
Oh, yeah.
complete with a
Yeah.
Clinique touch stick for blemishes?
Oh, my God.
It's hilarious and disturbing all at once.
It is fascinating
Yeah.
how Ellis uses
I-
the superficial details. He's not just building Bateman's character.
Wait.
He's using him as a funhouse mirror to reflect the shallow values of the era.
Yeah.
Everything is about appearances, brands having the right look. It's a critique of consumerism taken to its most absurd extreme.
But it goes deeper than just poking fun at 80s excess,
Right.
doesn't it?
Yes.
I mean, what do you make of this obsessive focus on appearances?
Yeah.
Is it satire, social commentary, or is it hinting at?
Well, I think it's all of those things working together
What?
to create this incredibly unsettling portrait of a man who's utterly lost.
Yeah.
You see, Bateman isn't just obsessed with possessing
Right.
these status symbols.
Yeah.
He seems to believe that by meticulously curating his image, he can somehow become someone real, someone worthy of attention. It's as if he's trying to construct an identity out of these external markers of success, but it's all just a facade.
That makes you wonder about the line between reality and fantasy in the book.
Totally.
Because there are times when
Yeah.
you're genuinely unsure whether the
Yeah.
horrific acts Bateman describes are actually happening or
Yeah.
if they're all in his head. Take the scene with the habit trail, just brutal.
Yeah. So disturbing.
Is he really capable of such a thing, or is it a manifestation of his deeply disturbed psyche?
That ambiguity is intentional,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things that makes American Psycho so psychologically disturbing.
It really is.
Ellis forces us to question
Yeah.
Bateman's reliability as a narrator,
Makes sense.
which in turn makes us question our own perceptions of what's real.
Wow.
It implicates us in his madness, even as we recoil from it.
Yeah.
What's your take on that, listener?
Ooh, good question.
Does the uncertainty make the book more disturbing
Yeah.
or add a layer of complexity that makes you think?
It's a question
Yeah.
that has haunted readers for decades.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
think that ambiguity is a big part of why American Psychos still feel so relevant today.
Totally.
But let's not forget the satire.
Right.
Ellis is absolutely ruthless
Yeah.
in his takedown of Wall Street culture,
Oh, yeah.
particularly the toxic masculinity that permeates it.
Yeah.
Bateman and his colleagues engage in these vapid conversations about status symbols, expensive restaurants,
Yeah.
trendy music,
And they're,
all while completely detached from any sense of empathy
totally.
or real human connection.
It's like they're performing a script of successful businessman,
Right.
but they've completely lost touch with any genuine emotion or morality.
Yeah.
Remember that scene where they're comparing business cards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's played for laughs, but it's
Yeah.
also deeply chilling because it highlights how their identities
Yeah.
are so wrapped up
It's all about
in these superficial markers of success.
font, the paper stock,
Yes.
the subtle off-white coloring.
Exactly.
It's a perfect distillation of the book's satire
It
on
is.
corporate culture and male vanity.
Uh-huh.
But it makes you think.
It does.
Is Ellis's satire just a product of its time, a critique of 80s excess?
Yeah.
Or is it a more universal commentary on human nature?
Right.
On the potential for darkness that exists? I think
Within any system that prioritizes image over substance.
that's one of the most intriguing questions the book raises.
Yeah.
And it's a question that becomes even more unsettling
I know.
when you consider the elephant in the room,
Right.
the graphic violence that permeates the narrative.
Uh-huh.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
And it's undoubtedly one of the reasons American Psycho remains
Sure.
so controversial.
You're not kidding. We're talking murder, torture, mutilation.
It's a lot.
Ellis doesn't shy away from depicting the brutality.
Oh, he does.
And there's a scene where Bateman murders a child in a park
Yeah.
that is just gut-wrenching.
It's a scene that forces us to confront
Yeah,
the most disturbing aspects of Bateman's character.
definitely.
But it also begs the question,
Right.
how are we meant to interpret this violence?
Yeah.
Is it meant to be taken literally?
Yeah.
Or is it symbolic of something else?
That's such a crucial question.
It is.
Is it about Bateman's internal rage?
It could be his alienation,
Possibly.
destructive nature of unchecked ambition.
Yeah.
Is Ellis trying to shock us?
Maybe.
Or is he using the violence to force us to look at something deeper,
Uh-huh.
something darker within ourselves
Right.
and the society that shapes us?
And that's where things get really interesting because American Psycho
Right.
doesn't offer any easy answers. It throws up a mirror to our own anxieties, our own obsessions, and dares us to look closely at what we see. It challenges us to grapple with the uncomfortable reality that the line between civilization and savagery might be thinner than we like to think.
And one of the ways Ellis explores that line is through
Yeah.
this recurring motif of mistaken identity.
Oh, yeah.
Bateman is constantly being confused with other people,
Yes.
colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers.
It's like he's a ghost drifting through this world of high rises and expensive restaurants, but never truly connecting with anyone or anything. He's surrounded by people
Yeah.
who look and sound just like him.
It's wild.
But there's no real substance, no genuine human connection. They're all playing a part wearing the same mask of success.
Right.
And that makes it even more difficult to pinpoint
Right.
who Bateman truly is beneath that mask.
It's unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah.
This idea that Bateman could be anyone
Uh-huh.
and anyone could be Bateman.
Totally.
It speaks to the dehumanizing nature
Yeah.
of that corporate culture.
Yeah.
A world
It is.
where individuals are reduced to their job titles
Totally.
and their net worth.
Precisely. It taps into that deep-seated fear of anonymity.
Yeah.
Of losing yourself in a crowd of people who are all striving for the same unattainable ideal.
And it's not just the people around him that contribute to this sense of identity diffusion.
Right.
Bateman himself seems to struggle with who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He name drops bands, designers, restaurants.
True.
It's almost like he's trying to assemble an identity from these external markers of status,
Yeah.
but it never quite comes together, does it?
It's a futile attempt to fill a void within himself. He's surrounded by an abundance of material wealth, but he remains spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. And this emptiness, this lack of a true self, fuels his descent
Totally.
into violence.
That raises a really interesting question for me.
Yeah.
We've talked about the violence as potentially symbolic, but is there a way to read it as a consequence?
Oh, absolutely.
This identity crisis Bateman is experiencing.
There's definitely an argument to be made there. If Bateman can't define himself through the traditional means of career relationships or personal values, maybe violence becomes a way for him to assert his existence,
Right.
however twisted and horrifying that might be.
It's a terrifying thought,
It is.
but it makes a lot of sense in the context of the book.
It does.
It also makes you think about how we define ourselves in a world that's constantly bombarding us with images and messages about who we should be, what we should buy, how we should look. Do you think that pressure to conform, to achieve a certain level of material success, contributes to a sense of emptiness or alienation in contemporary society?
It's definitely something worth considering. We live in a culture that often equates self-worth with external validation, with likes and followers and possessions. And when those things become the primary measure of success,
Right.
it's easy to lose sight of who we are at our core.
And maybe that's what makes American Psycho
Yeah.
so enduringly relevant. It holds up a mirror to our own anxieties about identity status and the emptiness that can come with chasing after
Totally.
external validation. It forces us to ask ourselves
Yeah.
some difficult questions about the values we prioritize and the potential consequences of a culture that worships at the altar of materialism.
And it does so without offering any easy answers. It leaves us with this lingering sense of unease, this feeling that maybe we're not all that different from. Right.
Patrick Bateman, after all.
Which brings us to that chilling final line of the book, "This is not an exit." What do you make of that, listener? Is Bateman trapped in his own personal hell? Is there no escape from the cycle of violence and consumerism? Or is Ellis suggesting something more profound, a warning that this darkness exists within all of us waiting to be unleashed?
It's a line that continues to resonate, to provoke debate and interpretation.
It does.
And that, I think, is the power of great literature. It stays with us long after we've finished reading, forcing us to grapple with its complexities
Totally.
and to confront the uncomfortable truths it reveals about ourselves and the world we inhabit.
Speaking of grappling with complexities, I can't let you go without talking about the film adaptation
Oh, the movie!
of American Psycho Christian Bale as Bateman.
Oh, good.
Iconic. It's interesting how the film takes a slightly different approach to the source material.
Yeah.
While the book is deeply internal focused on Bateman's twisted psyche, the movie externalizes
Yes.
some of that darkness, making the violence
Much more visceral and explicit.
Yes. And that choice really amplifies the horror of Bateman's actions. In the book, we're privy to his thoughts, his rationalizations, which can almost make the violence feel abstract.
Okay.
But in the film, we see it in all its horrifying detail, which forces us to confront the reality
right.
of what he's doing.
And yet, despite the brutality, the film also manages to inject a lot of dark humor
Yeah.
into the story. I mean, the business card scene,
Oh my God.
pure comedic gold. It's a perfect distillation of the book's satire on corporate culture and male vanity, but Bale's delivery
Oh, yeah.
takes it to a whole other level.
His performance is absolutely brilliant. He captures Bateman's superficial charm, his meticulous attention to detail,
Yeah.
and the simmering rage that lies just beneath the surface.
Totally.
It's a performance that stays with you long after the credits roll.
But there are some key differences
Yeah.
between the book and the film, aren't there?
Absolutely. The film streamlines the plot, cutting out some of the more repetitive and graphic scenes from the book. And it adds a hint of a redemption arc for Bateman at the end, which is completely absent
Interesting.
in the source material.
Do you think that changes
I think
the overall message of the story?
it opens up the film to different interpretations. Some viewers might see it as a way of humanizing Bateman, of suggesting that he's capable of remorse or change. Others might argue that it undermines the book's bleak outlook. Its assertion that there's no escape
Yeah.
from the cycle of violence and consumerism.
It's interesting to consider how those choices in adaptation
Yeah.
might influence how the audience perceives
Right.
the story and its characters. What stands out to you
Yeah.
about the film adaptation, listener? Does it capture the essence of the book for you, or do you think it loses something in the translation from page to screen?
It's a debate that has raged among fans for years, but I think both the book and the film offer unique perspectives on this complex and disturbing story.
Right.
They both force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we live in, even if they do so
Sure.
through different lenses.
And let's be real, no conversation about American Psycho would be complete without mentioning
Oh, yeah.
the soundtrack. Talk about a perfect time capsule.
What a soundtrack.
It's a blend of late 80s and early 90s pop.
Love it.
With artists like Huey Lewis and the News Genesis and Phil Collins, the music adds this whole other layer of irony to the story, juxtaposing these upbeat, synth-heavy tones
Yeah.
with the dark and violent acts
Right.
Bateman is committing.
It's brilliant. It's like the music is this constant reminder of the shallowness and artificiality of the culture Bateman is so desperately trying to be a part of, yet there's this sense that he doesn't really connect with it
Right.
on any meaningful level. It's just another accessory, another way to project
Ah.
an image of success and sophistication.
And that disconnect between image and reality is at the heart of American Psycho.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing yourself in a culture that values surface over substance, image over authenticity.
Yeah.
But it also raises some really profound questions
It does.
about human nature, about the
Yeah.
capacity for both good and evil that exists within all of us.
And that's what makes American Psycho such a powerful and enduring work of art.
Totally.
It doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions. It challenges us to confront the darkness, to acknowledge its existence both within ourselves and within the systems that shape our world.
It's definitely a book and a film that stays with you long after you've finished experiencing it. It makes you question.
Definitely.
And it definitely makes you look at the world around you with a more critical eye. So as we wrap up
Right.
this deep dive into American Psycho, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts, listener.
Is Patrick Bateman a product of his time, a symbol of 80s excess and corporate greed? Or is he a timeless archetype, a warning about the potential for darkness that lurks beneath the surface of any society that prioritizes wealth and status above all else? What does the book's enduring relevance say about our own society? Are we still grappling with the same demons of materialism, consumerism, and the pursuit of status at any cost?
Such great questions. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity even further, I encourage you to continue exploring American Psycho.
Yeah.
On your own, there are tons of critical essays articles
Oh, yeah.
and even documentaries that delve even deeper into the book's themes and its cultural impact.
Reading those different perspectives can really enrich your understanding of the book and how it continues to speak to our contemporary anxieties.
Absolutely. And of course, there's always the movie adaptation to revisit, see if it hits you differently now that we've unpacked some of the key themes and ideas. But most importantly, keep those questions in mind as you move through the world. How do you define yourself? What are the values that guide your choices? And how do you navigate a culture that often tries to define you based on what you buy, what you wear, and how many followers you have?
Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied. So what will you do with the insights you've gained from this deep dive? How will you use them to shape your own life, your own choices, your own understanding of the world around you?
Keep those questions in mind. And remember, if you're ever feeling overwhelmed by information overload, you know where to find us. We'll be here ready to take another deep dive into whatever fascinating topic you throw our way. Just submit your source material and we'll do the rest until next time.